Welcome to another episode of the Mind and Body Podcast. Today, we're going to continue our discussion on the nuts and bolts of strength training. Last week, we dealt with loads. What percentage of weight should you use in relation to your 1 rep max? That would actually optimize your strength gains. We dealt with sets or your overall volume and how to increase that through a mesocycle, and how to leverage your programming to see optimal results. Today, we're going to deal with 3 very important topics. We're going to talk about warming up, rest times, and deloads. And if we have time, we might touch on how to work around an injury. These are very, very important, but often overlooked, especially with beginners, young beginners particularly. So let's talk about warming up. Why should you warm up? Well, I think it's pretty obvious by the nature of the words. It actually does warm up your joints, ligaments, and muscles through going through that range of motion, full range of motion, a little bit of weight at the beginning, and you slowly increase that weight. You're stretching out the muscles and the ligaments. Blood is rushing into the area. Your body temperature is being raised. This is all good stuff for optimizing your performance once you move from warm-up sets to working sets. Number 2, it activates your central nervous system. Now, when I say activate, I don't mean like your central nervous system was asleep and you had to kind of wake it up like some type of machine. What I mean is you're not primed optimally for lifting those loads yet. You're cold. You're not used to firing those muscles as fast as you need to. So a warm-up phase protocol can really help getting your central nervous system primed for heavy lifting. Number 3, it dials in your technique. You get a good bar path in place. You're lifting, even when you start with a bar, you're lifting that bar as if you have 300 or 400 pounds on it. Good technique, slow, eccentric, then you're going to try to explode out of the bottom. All of this primes you well to be prepared for the working sets. And lastly, it prevents injury. Probably when you're young, you can, do a little something and then jump to working sets and you might be fine. But it's only a matter of time before that ends really bad for you. So if you don't warm up, it's just not a smart idea. It's really, really stupid to skip over a good warm-up protocol. So everybody typically divides your overall work into 2 sections, your warm-up sets and your working sets. I actually like to add an in-between category that I call weight acclimation. So you have your warm-up sets, your weight acclimation sets, which is actually embedded in your warm-up protocol, and then you have your working sets. So what does that look like, that protocol worked out? Well, first, now I'm dealing with your major prime movers here. So the lifts that are going to be like your deadlift, your squat, your bench press, your overhead press. These are using barbell. You could use the same basic protocol for dumbbells or machine training or even for hypertrophy. But this is especially true of the major power lifts. So that's the context that I'm talking about. When I start into my warm-up, I always start with a bar. The bar allows me, a typical conventional bar is 45 pounds. It's not heavy, but it allows me to kind of get my body moving and again, get that bar path established. After that, this is the sequence. Let's talk about bench press for a moment. Say that I'm going to be doing working sets, 3 sets, 3 reps of 315 on the bench. How do I warm up for that? It's a great question. Start with a bar and I do 10 reps with the bar. Now, sometimes if I feel a little bit stiff, like I'm just not quite feeling it yet, I might do more reps with the bar, maybe 10 to 20 reps, but it's somewhere right around in there, 10 reps. Then I move up to 90 pounds total. So that's putting 25s on each side. And I do that for 8 reps. I'm going to go all the way through this and then explain why I do it. Then I do 135 on the bar, I'm sorry, it's 135 total. So there's 45-pound plates on each side. I do that for 6 reps. And then I'm talking about weight here, 185. And I do that for 4 reps. And then I do 225 for 2 reps. And the next set would be 275 for 2 reps. Then I like to try to do one set that's a little bit closer to the weight I'm working with. And I usually like to get 10 to 15 pounds away from my working set. So here, if I'm doing 315, I might have 300 total with, counting the weight of the bar. And I might do that for one or two sets. That's like, again, a little bit more fine tuning of my weight acclimation. And then I jump into my working sets. If you notice my increments here, I do bar and then I add 50 pounds to the bar. Then I take those 25 pounds off each side. I put on 45-pound plates on each side, but that's actually adding 45 pounds total to the bar. Then I add 50 pounds to the bar. Then I add 45 pounds to the bar. Do you see how there's that increment of 50, 45? To me, it's really close to being about the same, and it's really simple to get through my warm up protocol. When it's pretty light, I keep my rest time in between these warm up sets to a minimum. Matter of fact, I do the bar, and the time I get the weight on for the next one, I go right into the next warm up set. So that's 90 pounds. Crank that out 8 times. Take off the 25s on each side. I put on the 45-pound plates on each side, and I rip that out for 6 times. Now I'm starting to slow down, give myself a little bit more rest time in between. I have 185 on the bar and I hit that 4 times. Again, excellent technique, slow eccentric, just like I'm lifting 315 or more. And why do I do this? Because not only does this really warm up my body well, it allows my body to get acclimated to lifting heavier weights. So the time I'm hitting 185 or 225, 275, my body is getting used to that heavy weight, but it's still not at the same rep range that my working sets are. And so I'm not super fatigued. It's probably very, very minor in the amount of fatigue that I'm taking on at that point, but it allows me to get up to my working sets. So somebody might ask, well, how many warm-up sets do you do? In this case, let me count it up here. That is 6 working warm-up sets to get to 315 for sets of 3. 3 sets of 3 reps. So it took me 6 warm-up sets. Phew, having a hard time with my math here. If you are lifting quite a bit heavier, so if I was benching 500 pounds, I'm going to have more warm-up sets because I'm going to still have the same type of increments all the way up to close to my working set. Hopefully that makes sense. So if you are an elite level power lifter, you're squatting somewhere between, 600 to 800 pounds on a squat or something like that. If you're doing that, your warm-up protocol is going to be quite extensive, but you need it if you're going to be putting your body under that much load. It's really important that you follow this type of protocol. Now, let me answer this though. Let's say you're starting out from the beginning. Let's go back to bench press here. And let's just say that you're getting used to that movement and you're just not very strong at it at the moment. So you're actually max right now is 135. And so you work out with maybe 90 pounds. So you're like, oh man, how do I warm that up? Well, you would just break up your increments a little bit smaller. You may start with the bar. You might even start with lighter dumbbells. Is a good way to warm up. Maybe even some push-ups to start, then move to the bar, then move to a smaller fraction higher. Then you might just have 2 to 3 sets of warming up before you start into your working set. So if you're a beginner, your warm-ups are going to be briefer, but you still want to have a protocol. So hopefully that helps with your warm-ups. Let me know if you have any questions there. It's really important that you dial in a good warm-up protocol. Let's talk about rest times. Oh my goodness. There is a lot of dogma around rest times. Some people will say for high intensity interval training, it needs to be 30 seconds to a minute. If it's hypertrophy, it's 1 minute in between sets. This is working sets, by the way. If it's strength, it's 2 to 3 minutes, and that they're really dogmatic on those points. I think those are maybe a good place to start, especially if you're a beginner. But I really think the idea of having a really regimented time period between sets for strength training is a really dumb idea. And here's why. Because you're not training for cardio. So this is not like high intensity interval training that you need to keep a certain level of your heart rate higher. It's not like hypertrophy. And even with hypertrophy, I think you still want to give yourself enough time to recover. It's not a cardio exercise. Unless, of course, you're trying to kill two birds with one stone. You're like, hey, I want to work out fast. I want to get my workout done. I want to keep my rest times down. That's fine. You can do that, particularly for hypertrophy. But for strength, it's really a dumb idea because you're putting yourself under such heavy loads. So, what do I recommend? I recommend not having a specific time, but rather key markers that you can kind of mark off and you'll know that you're ready for your next set. What are some of those markers? First, when your cardio has stabilized. In other words, your breathing has returned to normal. If you're really breathing heavy, and you just did like a heavy set of deadlifts and your workout partner's like, hey man, you ready to go, ready to get back at it? And you're like, you're breathing really heavy. And you're like, okay, let me put in my weight belt. Let me try this. I'm telling you, your breathing is going to be the limiting factor in that lift. And that's not what you want. It's better take a few minutes, take 3 to 5 minutes if you need it, but don't allow the breathing to be the limiting factor. Now, this is actually a good reason to do cardio regularly, just as a part of health, so that you can expand your endurance for lifting and lifting heavy. It's a good point. But when you're trying to optimize strength and that is your focus, you want to stabilize your cardio first before you return to another working set. Number two, when you're training the muscles and you feel that fatigue, you want to wait until you're no longer feeling that muscle burn, or sometimes you just feel depleted of strength. You want to wait until you get back to the place where you feel like, okay, I could do another working set and I could basically match what I did before, maybe even do better, because after your first set, sometimes you're kind of getting used to it still, even after your warm-up protocol. So you might even do better for your second set. But if you've done any lifting for any length of time, you know when you feel like, hey, my strength's returned. If you did really heavy lifting and then you waited 10 seconds and then you did it again and you got under that bar, you would just feel in your body under that weight like, I can't do this yet. This is just not smart, right? And so you want to learn your body well enough to where you recognize, okay, I'm no longer feeling that burn or that disruption in the muscle, at least to the level I couldn't perform. I don't feel depleted like I did, ready for another set. Third thing, and you find this in the literature and strength training, you can go back to another set when your synergist muscles are not the limiting factor. Now, synergist muscles are the muscles that are working alongside the prime movers. So like if I'm doing squats and I'm really trying to focus on my quad strength, I might be, do my first set or second set and my lower back is just feeling it. So that's you might say a synergist muscle. And it's just, I need to wait until I feel like, hey, this is no longer burning. It's no longer depleted. If I'm still feeling some soreness there, you might even want to just kind of walk around a little bit right before you do that set, or just sit and be quiet, waiting till you feel ready to go. That's really important too. And the last, this is really important, when your psychology is ready to hit another set. You don't want to just think of your physiology. Does my body feel ready to move again? Am my cardio, is it dialed in? Is my muscles, fired up, ready to go again? They're not depleted, so on and so forth. You want to think, am I mentally prepared to get under the bar? Now, obviously, you need to train your psychology. You need to work on your mindset. It's not going to just, if it was hard lifting and it's maybe early in the morning and you're just not feeling it, sometimes you just have to do the hard work. You have to get under the bar, whether you feel like it or not. But there is a psychological game that you can learn and get better at, and you'll optimize your strength training regimen. So those are the four things that I would say are necessary before you go back to another set. So instead of thinking about time, rest periods as a particular time, like 3 to 5 minutes or 2 to 3 minutes, as some would say, think of these key markers, and I think you're going to be good to go. So we talked about warm-ups, we talked about rest times. Let's talk a little bit about deloads. Now, today in the literature of strength training, there's a lot of talk about whether deloads is better than just constant training. In other words, you never actually deload, you just go from one training regimen to the next. You might take a rest day or two, but no real deload protocol. Just jump right in. Always train, be hardcore, work out hard. Some people will criticize the deload phase. Matter of fact, maybe I should clarify what I mean by deloads. Deloading refers to a purposeful reduction in training demand with the intention of enhancing the preparedness for successive training cycles. So most would take like a whole week, some would take longer, but a whole week of reducing the training load and intensity so that you really fully recover, so that you potentiate the next training phase. Now, again, some would say, man, that's for wimps. I never deload. I just train because I'm hardcore. But actually, I find that I train harder when I have an intentional deload in mind. Why is that? Well, one, I can train all the way to absolute failure. Matter of fact, I can overreach on my training because I know, hey, I'm going to have a deload week and I'm going to be able to fully recover. So I can push my body to the absolute maximum. I can deload. And then what I can do is I can rinse and repeat. I can jump back into the next training regimen and work all the way to having the highest level of intensity as possible, working harder than I did last time, all the way up to peak performance till I can't perform at a higher level at this moment. Deload. And you just rinse and repeat over and over and over again. So at some point, your fatigue in training, if you're doing it right, will be so high that you will not be able to beat your prior performance. So preferably, you deload after 4 to 6 weeks of strength training, but sometimes it doesn't always work that way. Like you're training pretty hard. It may be you increased volume or you increased weight too fast and you're accumulating systemic and localized fatigue to where you're just like everything just feels really bad. You're not performing. You're midway through a mesocycle, but you don't feel like you're performing at the same level. Well, what do? First, I would recommend not trying to do a deload because sometimes, well, let's just be honest. Sometimes some training, days just suck. Like you just do a bad job. Like you're tired, you didn't sleep well, you didn't get enough nutrition. You can be off for a day or off for a couple of days. It's not always a clear sign that it's time to deload. What I like to do, if I'm just really feeling it, I'm not feeling strong, I will shift from doing max effort lifts to doing what I call dynamic effort lifts. What is that? It's where you basically are cutting your weight in half. You're doing the same exercises, the same type of rep ranges, same number of sets, but you cut your weight in half and you just really work on controlling that weight, dialing in your technique, and actually working on your speed in that movement. It's actually studies have shown that dynamic effort lifting can actually move the needle when it comes to your strength development. So it's a great way to continue to potentiate your strength development, but it also gives you a little bit of an active recovery. You're like, hey, I'm working on technique, lighter loads, working on speed, and it can heal you up to just jump right back into max effort lifts the next week. It's a great way to do it. I do this often, especially towards the end. I might sprinkle in some dynamic lifts if I'm feeling like I'm coming back to my training regimen and I'm feeling more sore. I'm realizing, okay, I need to do some things that are going to actually enhance my ability to recover, but I still think I have another week or so of hard training in me before I deload. So this is a great way to do it. So, but how do you know when you really need to deload? Well, when you have multiple movements that need a recovery session, they're just you're just zapped. Your whole body and your mind, it just feels drained. When you begin to underperform on most of these movements at the same time, and it's for multiple days, as much as a week, you know that it's time to just do a deload, and then you can come back in and start another mesocycle. Now, what is my protocol for deloads? Just full disclosure. It's only in the last couple of years that I started to experiment with deloading. And so I still feel like I'm learning this, but this is what I do right now. There are the things that you can research that could help you with a protocol. The first half of the week, what I do is actually like what I described. I do all dynamic lifting. So everything is cut in half. Like I only do basically between 30 and 50% of my 1 rep max. I'm doing the same lifts, same type of rep ranges, same type of number of sets, but I'm just trying to work on technique, just trying to feel the motion, full range of motion, all that kind of things. That's what I do for the first half of the week. Second half of the week, I'll do more of an active rest where I'm doing things where my body is moving. It might be some body weight type movements, so like push-ups, pull-ups, dips, some ab movements, just some body weight squats. Nothing that's going to super fatigue me. It might even be just, I'm going to go for a walk today. I'm going to get, 10,000 steps in. I'm just going to get my body moving. And what that does is it potentiates recovery. Make sure that I'm really nailing my sleep at night, getting extra rest, dialing in my nutrition, making sure that's on point. These are all things that can help you with the deload. Then when you come back, you're going to be so much stronger. And you start another strength training regimen, and you should be good to go. This time, you might have learned from your last training regimen. You're like, you know what? I added weight too fast, or I added volume too fast. And so you learn every time you do a mesocycle, you're going to dial in just a little bit more on how to optimize that training regimen. So anyways, hopefully that helps. Warm-ups, we dealt with rest times, we dealt with a deload phase. Let me just touch just a second on injuries. Some people will get, matter of fact, it's probably a matter of time before you will have some type of minor injury. Now, obviously, if you have a major injury, like you tear your pec muscle off the bone, okay, yeah, that needs surgery, and that's going to take a lot more of a protocol to heal up. And so you want to make sure that you're talking to a physician. You have good physical therapy to kind of get you back to status quo. But what happens for me? I don't know if this is like you. I might have a little muscle that pops, something in my back, or my shoulder feels a little bit weird or sore because I'm doing, so many movements involves the shoulder. And what people will often do is they will just stop working out. They're like, oh man, I don't feel good, so I'm going to stop working out. I would recommend really trying to learn how to work around injuries. Sometimes it's just changing a little bit of the angle of the movement, and you no longer feel that pain. Like for instance, um, I'm actually doing a hypertrophy training session right now, but my forearm is just feeling really, really sore. So especially when I do pull-ups and my grip is facing outward, I can just, man, I just really feel it in my forearm. So what I've done actually is turn my grip facing in, and I'm actually able to do the movement. So for this training cycle, I'm doing pull-ups in that way, avoiding that pain. It's not like I didn't pull a muscle or anything. There's just a little bit more soreness there, and it's just not resolving. So I found a way to work around it. For a while last year, I actually hurt my right shoulder, and I just couldn't do any type of shoulder press or incline presses. But I was able to do flat bench, and I was able to do lateral raises to hit my side delts. I was able to do actually upright rows, surprisingly enough. So I found ways to train the muscle groups while working around those injuries, and I was able to continue to see gains, but at the same time be able to heal up the way that I need to. So that's just something that you can think about that may help your strength training journey. I would love to hear from you, by the way. These are just some nuts and bolts that I've learned in training. Some of this will translate to different modalities, but today we were talking specifically about strength training goals. So let me know how you do things. I'd love to hear about your warm-up protocol, or maybe how you do rest periods, or maybe some things that you do during deload or working around an injury. Love to hear from you. Have a great day.